Hello, boys and girls. My name is Latina Gade, and I teach third grade math at Roy Neal Shellen Elementary School. Today, I'm going to give you lesson 4 of Module 1. Let's jump right in. So let's look at today's target or today's objective. It says that I can understand the meaning of the unknown as the size of the group in division. So if you remember our first 3 lessons, boys and girls, our first 3 lessons were on basically multiplication, okay? I taught you the formula for multiplication, and we also use pictures and arrays to help us make multiplication sentences. And we had a formula for making a multiplication sentence. It was the number of groups times the size of the group equals the total. So now today you're going to see that the inverse operation of multiplication is division, because I always tell my students that division is just backwards multiplication, and you'll see what that means as we get deeper into the lesson, okay? The first thing I want to do is some group counting. Let's count by twos, you guys, and let's use our fingers to track it. Are you ready? Let's go. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. Now let's use our fingers to track it backwards, all right? Really think hard. 20, 18, 16, 14, 12, 10, 8, 6, 4, 2. Very good. Let's count by threes, forwards and backwards. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27, 30. Let's count backwards now. 30, 27, 24, 21, 18, 15, 12, 9, 6, 3. Very good, guys. All right, so it says that we're going to say the repeated addition sentence, but let's write it as I say it, okay? So let's look at what we have, all right? We have 3 groups, and what's the size of the group? How many are in each group? That's correct, too. So can anybody guess what the repeated addition sentence would be for this picture? Let's write it down. It would be 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2. So all we have to say is 2 plus 2 equals 4. 4 plus 2 equals 6, all right? All right, let's move on. All right, you guys, if you have paper at home or if you have a personal whiteboard, let's go ahead and fill in the blanks for this equation, all right? It says on your personal whiteboards, complete the multiplication equation. So you kind of have to know the formula for multiplication to be able to complete this. Now remember what I said the formula was. It's the number of groups times the size of the group equals the total, okay? So let's look and see how many groups we have, all right? So right now I see 3 large circles, so the number of groups is 3, and we see that 3 down here reflected in our equation. Now remember the second number is the size of the group, all right? So when I'm talking about the size of the group, I'm trying to figure out how many are in each group, okay? So if we look inside of the large circles, we see there how many red circles inside of the large circles? We see 2. So the number of groups is 3, the size of the groups is 2. Now, equals the total. What I want to know after the equal sign is how many red dots are there all together. So I can count by twos. 2, 4, 6. 3 times 2 equals 6. Okay? Let's look at our application problem for today, all right? It says, the student council holds a meeting in Mr. Chang's classroom. They arrange the chairs in 3 rows of 5. How many chairs are used in all? Use the RDW process. Now, it tells us to use the RDW process. What does RDW stand for? You should know that. Read, draw, write. So we've already read it. Now we need to find something to draw. Now, I love tape diagrams, but sometimes tape diagrams are not the best picture to draw to help you solve a problem. In this case, a tape diagram wouldn't be effective. One of the things that tells me what I should draw is this right here. 3 rows of 5. What does that sound like to you? To me, that sounds like an array. And remember, an array is a set of rows and columns. So when I see 3 rows of 5, that lets me know that I need 3 rows and the size of the row is 5. So let's draw an array here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Remember, rows are horizontal, columns are vertical, okay? So we have 1 row of 5 and we need 2 more. And when we're making arrays, it's very important that we try to make sure that they're in straight rows and columns. We don't want them everywhere. We want them to kind of be in line. It may not be perfect, you guys, but we want to make it as perfect as we can. So here I have 3 rows of 5. So now what I can do is I can use this array to make a multiplication sentence. So what I have to look at is I look at the number of rows, because the number of rows tells me the what? The number of groups. Remember, rows and groups are the same thing. So how many rows do I have? I have 3 rows. And what's the size of my rows, which means how many are there on each row? There are 5. So now I can skip count by the size of my group to find my total. And this one is easy because it's 5s. So all I have to do is skip count down the rows. So I have 5, 10, 15. So 3 times 5 equals 15. So we read, we drew, and now we need to write. Let's go back to our question to know what we need to write, okay? Our question asks us how many chairs are used in all. So we would say, I'll just write it up here. There are 15 chairs used. So we made sure that we did every step that they told us to do. They told us to use RDW. We read it, we drew an array, and then we wrote a sentence to answer our question, okay? So we always want to make sure that we do all of those steps. All right, you guys, now let's go back to our objective for today. Now remember, we wanted to find the size of the group today, so let's look at our example problem they gave us, all right? It says division as fair share, relate the answer to the unknown factor, and you'll see what that means as we read along. Yesterday, Mr. Ziegler bought a new pack of 18 markers. He shared them with me by dividing them into equal groups. How many equal groups, guys? 2 equal groups. Now I have a bunch of new markers for making our charts, all right? Do you want to know how many he gave me? So let's think about it. Our question here says, what are we trying to find, the number of groups or the size of the groups? And this one is pretty easy, okay? Because this is what we know. We always have to look at what information we know in this problem, all right? So one thing that we know is we know we have a total. We know that we have how many markers altogether? We have 18 markers altogether. So we know we're not looking for the total. Let's see if we can find any more information in here. When I look, I also see this, 2 equal groups, which lets me know that I already know how many groups I have. So if I have the total and I know the number of groups, then I have to be looking for the size of the group. And remember, when we're talking about the size of the group, we're talking about how many there are in each group. So what we want to do here is we want to find out how many markers are in each group, all right? So who's sharing the markers? It will be me and Mr. Ziegler, okay? So that's two groups. So what you can do is you can actually just draw two circles. Okay? So one circle represents me, the other circle represents Mr. Ziegler. Now what I want to do is, up here it says fair share. Now think about your brothers and sisters and you're sharing something. If your mom buys a pack of cookies, do you want to have less than your brothers and sisters? No, you don't. You want to have the same amount because you think that's fair, right? So we want to do the same thing with these markers. And the only way that I can do that is to give one to each group until I run out, all right? So what I'm going to do to represent my markers is I'm going to draw one circle in each group until I run out at 18, okay? So watch what I do here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, all right? So you guys, I have 18 markers and I've just divided them into two groups, all right? So now what we can do is we can count the number of circles we have in each group, and that will actually tell us the size of each group, all right? So let's see. We should have the exact same number in both circles. If we don't, we know we did something wrong, so let's check, all right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I have 9 in this group, and let's count this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that came out as a fair share, didn't it? So what did I do here, you guys? What I did was I actually divided. When we divide, boys and girls, we start with our total. And what was our total? How many markers did we have all together? We had 18. And we divided those 18 markers into how many groups? Who's the groups? The groups are me and Mr. Ziegler. So that's two people. We divided 18 by 2. Okay? And how many markers did Mr. Ziegler and I get? When we divided and we did the fair share, we saw that Mr. Ziegler and I both got 9 markers. So when we think about division, we should be thinking about a fair share. We want to take a total and we want to divide it by a number, and we want to have the same number in each group. Do you understand? All right, let's move on. Now, let's try it in a different way, and this will be the last problem we do. Let's suppose that Mr. Ziegler, instead of giving me 18 markers, he gave me 15 markers instead. And now, since he gave me a less amount, but now he feels bad. He knows we have a third teacher, and he wants to share with that third teacher too. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take 15 markers and we're going to divide them among 3 teachers. So how many groups do we have? Well, let's think about it. We have 3 teachers, so we have 3 groups, okay? And my question down here says, what are we trying to find? The number of groups or the size of the group? Think about our objective. Our objective said we were going to find the size of the group today. Now, that doesn't automatically mean that's what we're going to find, but that's what makes sense here, okay? Because we have 15 markers and we're dividing them among 3 people. The people are the groups. Now what we need to do is find out the size of the group, which in this case will be how many markers does each teacher get, okay? So let's look. I have Mr. Ziegler, myself, and our third teacher, and we want to divide 15 markers. So what we want to do is we want to do the fair share method, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give 1 to each group until I run out, okay? So let's try that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Now, how did I know that I needed to stop at 15? That's correct because I only had 15 markers, so I don't want to give out less markers and I don't want to give out more. So I knew that I needed to stop counting at 15. So what I did was I gave one marker to each teacher until I ran out. Now, when we go back and we look, since we did the fair share method, we should see that all the teachers have the same amount. If they don't, we have done something wrong. So we may, just because this one is correct doesn't mean we don't need to check the other two. Because if this one has 7 or this one has 6, we've done something wrong and we need to go back and see what we've done wrong, okay? So let's make sure that all of them are equal, all right? Because that's very important when it comes to multiplication and division. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It looks pretty good to me, you guys. Each group has how many markers in it? Has 5. So now let's use this picture to make a division sentence, all right? So remember, when we do division, we start with the total, okay? So when it comes to multiplication, you kind of have a set formula. It is the number of groups times the size of the group equals the total. But in division, you always start with the total, but the size of the group and the number of groups can flip-flop between the equal sign, okay? And you'll see more as we do more lessons, okay? So let's start here. Remember, I told you with division, we start with the total. How many total markers did we have before we started dividing them? We had 15. And what did we do? We divided those 15 markers among how many people? 3 people. And that 3 is the number of groups, okay? Then we decided that each teacher gets how many markers? Each teacher gets 5 markers, all right? So in this case, we have the total divided by the number of groups equals the size of the group, all right? So we'll practice that a little bit more on our next lesson. That's all I have for you today. Thank you for tuning in.